Before I start the formal keynote, two issues I need to touch. I need to thank Dr. Balagopal Prabhu for bringing out some things that are very close to our heart and encapsulating it so very well. There is an old gentleman of India who wrote this in depth in the year 1929, and it's still valid. His name is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. The book was Village Swaraj, and the sentence was that unless you connect your hands with your brain, education does not get imparted. The student sees what he ought not to, he hears what he ought not to, his hands do what they ought not to, and he learns what he ought not to. This is what he said. Second, I need to tell Architect Prashant, I am extremely envious of this man spending 3 months looking around India. Okay? I wish I had that opportunity. Unfortunately, Kant was in Kerala and not in Gujarat when he did that, but I wish that I had this because it's an opportunity of a lifetime, and it turns your entire education on its head. And also, his talk was very inspiring. Now, I move on to what I'm asked to. I'm not going to talk. Well, first of all, I must formally thank Dr. P.P. Anil Kumar, and Jinan in particularly for getting us here to be able to share what we think about it. I have never understood the theory part of architecture, you know. I have understood the understanding part of architecture, and that has taught me far more than the theory part of architecture, because even then the theory came from books that did not belong to us. So I'm going to share our thoughts, Paul and mine, on the aesthetic vocabulary of our built environment, contextual or universal, images of experience, and why. This is what engages us. As Dr. Prabhu talked about emotional engagement, when we look at a vision, a visual like this, it engages us. It does not enrage us. We are here because we are enraged, most of us, with what is going on. And 3 weeks ago, somebody sent me a mail saying, images of fine architecture, and I couldn't really help torture you with those. So I'll do that later. The contextual diversity of our aesthetics. This is the diversity in hot dry climate, hot humid climate regions, moderate climate region, composite climatic region, cold humid, the valley area in Kashmir, and climatic region, cold dry climatic region. We are very fortunate that we have these 5.5 climates. I call it 5.5 because technically we are only supposed to have 5. It's been decided, but I'd like to split cold humid and cold dry into 2 because they're very, very different, and they're very different responding architecture from it. Our colors and our complexities are all around us. This is what we have in diversity. These are street facades in Jaipur, and I can put 30 pages like this and I would still not cover Jaipur area. Openings, just openings. Again, I can put 30 pages more and I would be able to cover the diversity of this and the harmony amongst it. Screens that we have. Just goes on and on. So, one image you can see what is the diversity of this country, and it's only in one city in Udaipur, which is Udaipur. Back attached to the good image and then the torture. This is what was sent to me as fine architecture. And that goes around, I'm sure. And I don't know how it's called fine except one or two examples within this. I don't know whether this floor of these houses is horizontal or not, or how do we sleep there. And that happens to be in Jaipur. Okay? I can never understand this arrow. And this takes the cake. My professor in my postgraduate course wrote a book on design education, and chapter 7 was variety and variety. He said there is genuine variety and there is fraudulent variety. I think we all know what he means. Variety for variety's sake is fraudulent variety. And as if, well, goes on anyway. And this, then I come across 20 kilometers from Chittor on way to Begu. In villages, these are the stone walls and gates done by the craft persons themselves in their spare time. And that's our sensitivity, our creativity, and which we can't take the eyes off if you pass through that. We can't take our eyes off. So where did all this begin? You know, we had all this. We have three eras. We have the pre-modern movement era, the modern movement era, and the 1991, post-91 globalization, what I call the free-for-all era. The modern movement brought simplicity of lines, shapes, and volumes to architecture. It maximized the use of new technology. I'm sure you can't read effectively, and industrially produced materials. It was based on the beliefs that since the production processes were being universalized, so can the products. It diluted the merits and the relevance of traditional knowledge, the wisdom, the approach to sustainable development. It did not use local skill sets and local crafts, and consequently it diluted our contextual diversity. These are buildings that have come up in Ahmedabad and other areas by architects who are not Indian. And you can see this particular building. This is in Ahmedabad and that is in Boston. And the similarity between the two and the climatic differences between the two say whatever we want to say. And that's the Indian architects following the modern architecture movement. Good architecture, but as I said, clean lines, clean forms, clean shapes and volumes, and that remove the craft from being incorporated. Then came the dawn of disappearance of our contextual diversity. It's a free-for-all variety. The opening up of our economy seems to have led to nearly complete disappearance of our contextual diversity. The almost unlimited choices in the new materials and technology, coupled with the national focus on rapid growth in our development, led to a scenario where no item was left, no time was left for how to make a choice appropriate for our society. Market-driven economy, computer-driven designs and images, and vendor-driven choices led to discontinuity and dilution in the aspirations for contextual architecture. It rarely pleased the senses in true sense of the word, or even engaged the viewer to evoke any memorable experiences as it used to for centuries. The emerging educational institutions did not find it either necessary or have been incapable of reversing such a direction as a trend, and consequently the free-for-all has become the new style of architecture. And the homogeneity that Jilan has been talking about. I have to thank him because he's really the angry, not so young man in my life. Every time I've met him, there is an anger that's seething. It comes out, and it comes out very well, but anger is not the best way to achieve what he wants to achieve, but surprisingly, he's achieved much more than that. Obviously not as much as he wants to, probably. Again, these are things which are, and then if that was not enough, this is it, and two of them are green buildings on the right. Okay? And this is how green our country will become if we allow our country to become. So let's backtrack a bit to understand the difference. This is Jaipur city. What we were doing was more important than who we were, because I'm sure very few people in this audience can tell us who the architect of this building was. Till the 20th century, the name of the architect was not important. In the 20th century, architect became more important than the person who got the buildings built or the purpose for which it was built. So we know Shah Jahan built the Taj Mahal and Akbar built Fatehpur Sikri, but we do not know the designers. Today, when an architect comes for employment to us, and I asked him, give me 10 names of Indian architects other than the top 25, very difficult. But if I asked them, give me 5 or 7 names of projects of Zaha Hadid and Michael Graves and Frank Gehry, and they're more than 5 and 7. And that is what is the scenario. Now, that camel on the right bottom is from Pushkar. Okay? Do we call it design, creativity? And there are thousands of camels, beautified so-called, but they have been enhanced. Whatever we did it with our hearts in the right place, and not only with our minds in the right place. If you see these craft persons, if you see how focused they are, and if we asked ourselves, when was the last time that we were as focused as this in our work, we would find it difficult to find that occasion. We had examples of good taste, good aesthetics. I want to call it taste because aesthetics is again a word which is difficult to define. Taste is relatively easier. In nature all around us, and we grew up experiencing it. We have examples of good taste in man-made spaces all around us, and we grew up experiencing it. This ghat is near Pune. And this is just mind-blowing experience of proportions, of use of stone, of making that ghat. You want to go back again and again. We had examples of good taste in our decorative skills all around us, and we grew up experiencing that as well. Two of the central images are from the entries we have received in the Unknown Craft Persons Trophy from NASA that our foundation has instituted for the past 4 years, wherein a student is asked to go look for a traditional craft, document it in 7 A3 size pages in handwritten text and hand-sketched drawings, and talk about when did it start, why did it start, what were the materials and processes, and what is its relevance today. And this is from those 2 entries. The notions of good aesthetics and not good aesthetics are being pushed down our throats without any explanation on the whys of it. And therefore, you see Jaipur as it was from 1728 and Jaipur as it is beginning to change today. Oops. Anything that is meant to be called good is called designer product. So these are our designer settlements, except for Auroville, which is a designer settlement making a lot more sense. I've kept that only to differentiate it between the other three. So a few points to ponder. Why is it that a man on the street can pass a judgment on whether he likes a piece of music or a work of art or not, but is hesitant to pass one on the architecture around him? He waits for somebody to tell him whether it's good architecture or bad, because it's dealt with by the notions of architecture, not what his heart tells us or tells him. Presently, we, the architects, the builders, the clients, want the images that we like from anywhere in the world to be reproduced irrespective of their context in our backyards. So we get these days a lot from Southeast Asia, where water is abundant and they want it replicated in Rajasthan. We also like to extrapolate the experiences that we are enamored with from one context to another, without realizing that it is the totality that contributes to that experience and not just a part of it. So we can't separate that part from the whole and then take it somewhere else and expect that that experience gets created. Why are our notions of aesthetics formed by images and not through actual experiences? I do not know. I think it should be that the images should become images from what we understand and what we want to show as experiences. A few more questions to ponder. Why are we not encouraged, either in our childhood or in our academic tenure or even in our professional career, to make our own judgments, but are asked or expected to believe in, accept and follow someone else's judgment? So when we read about what is Chandigarh and the High Court, all of us go to Chandigarh knowing fully well what is good there and what is bad. And then we keep a checklist with us. High Court dekha, uske upar ka ye dekha, darwaja dekha. Have you seen the plaza? Have you seen the hand, the monument of hand? And we come back without actually experiencing or walking on that plaza in the harsh sun and questioning Mr. Corbusier, what made you think of this? Actually, the front entrance of the High Court is not utilized for the last 50 years. It's a side entrance near the parking that is utilized. And we still worship it. Why are we often scared or hesitant to make our own judgments for a contextual response, even when we need that to do so in our design projects and processes? We hesitate. What will people say? Did Charles Correa do this? What was the response of Zaha Hadid would be? Why are our cities before 20th century, before even middle of 20th century, have always been congruent, and all our development thereafter have been incongruent? You walk from VT in Mumbai to Flora Fountain, on both sides there are buildings, no two buildings are alike. And if you look closely, no two doors and windows of the same building on different floors are alike. And yet they are congruent. Why do we not consider the real user or the man on the street to be our audience for whom we design creatively? Why do we do it only for a selective audience who are more likely to appreciate our designs, which always need explanations? Our design, all that we have tried to do comes out just right in 5 different visuals, one of which is taken on 22nd June at 3 p.m. from the southwest corner, and so on and so forth. But we should not be able to really depend on experiencing what we have designed. People should feel happy about it when they enter, the same way they feel happy about a nice tree or a nice village. No village in this country has had to explain to anybody, and yet it evokes phenomenally positive emotions in us? Shouldn't these questions be paramount to us if we call ourselves creative designers? We've grown up looking at these images, Louis Kahn's IIM. If you can look closely, you can see the conditions of this building after 50 years. It's being conserved. These pictures were taken before being conserved. And we all grew up as architects listening to, I asked brick what it wanted. And it said it wanted an arch. But arch also shouted that I can't be in tension, And there are 3 dormitories there where arches are in tension, and therefore there is a hidden concrete beam behind it. Most of us don't even know that. Now, that is different from this. If you can see, this is a 150-year-old brickwork in Lucknow. And see how the bricks have one brick. One brick. That is what we mean when we say our hearts are in the right place and not only our mind. 2 minutes silence, please. Today is Martyrs' Day, Gandhiji's death anniversary. Thank you. So, what does this tell us? What can we not do with bricks? If only we respect a brick, not as a 350 millimeter thick wall or 150 millimeter thick wall, but as something which can really offer itself to produce this articulation of a building without having the glass veneer and Elucobond. And this is in a town called Bharuch, an architect's house. A karigar from Uttar Pradesh. I've never seen better brickwork in my life, in my career, in contemporary this. And this gentleman was a karigar who could lay only 125 bricks in a day as against 250 bricks that the others laid. And the architects were demanding that you must increase your productivity. After a while he chose to return. He said, I'm going back because I can't do less than what I need to do. And that is the strength of this country. Fortunately, 3 of the architects realized this and asked him to stay back and are getting this work done. We say plaster work. This is lime plaster in Udaipur City Palace, done 350 years or 330 years ago, where today more than 700,000 people visit this palace per year and everybody touches it. And we say that we are not looking after our modern buildings and we are not maintaining them. And this block does not need any maintenance, It can stand abuse. There is no chowkidar there to tell you don't touch it. And this is just a wall plaster on elements. So where are we? What is contextual to us? This or patterned plaster made through a brush that you have or a roller that you have? These are human beings doing this. So what next? Now this is, to me, the nichod of what we want to say. We must accept that there is no clean slate in life, All of us begin to design on a clean sheet of paper. And we think that's the greatest freedom we have. It's the greatest limitation we will have. Because there is no clean slate in life. There is a land, it has terrain, it has trees, it has clouds, it has a climate, it has soil, it has rocks, it has so many things that is already there on the slate. You are just adding one little thing on that slate. And you need to respect the slate and you need to not see as a limitation or a constraint, but as an opportunity to contribute. And then it will automatically become contextual. The aesthetics will automatically arise out of it. You won't need to make efforts on what is beautiful. Acceptance that creativity in design does not require a clean slate. Actually, it enhances the slate that's already there by your trying hard not to disrespect the elements that are already there, or even the insect life that's already there. Acceptance that creativity of design within constraints can and will bring out greater variety of choices and responses in terms of design. Because you have so many doors that you can't go through, you find new doors to open because your inner urge requires that you rise to that challenge and not give up on that. Acceptance that India has 5 climatic regions and that each one has a plethora of creative solutions evolved using local resources which constitute a part of our traditional knowledge and wisdom and are still relevant to us. And imparting greater familiarity with climates and context is the primary responsibility of all architectural and engineering institutions of India. I'll now share with you what we do in our own practice, very briefly, and it's not images and it's not our projects. These are the 5 climates. So we worked out, if you want to make a sustainable building, then these 5 climates, 5.5 climates that you see, they are written here, and these are how to make the insides comfortable with what strategy, and in summer, which of these strategies that can be used in different climates. In monsoon, which strategies can be used in different climates. And in winter, what strategies can be used in different climates. So it's a matrix, and we start with that. So we know what not to use, what solutions don't. We've taken it further by looking at architecture of India and understanding, and this is aside, this is part of the whole school development program that I am involved in, that if we wanted to remove the architect from designing school buildings in rural areas, we wanted the teachers to design their schools which are not more than 2 rooms, 3 rooms, 5 rooms, 10 rooms, and build it through the local masons, so that the engineer trained in city doesn't really have to go and supervise, because he actually can't supervise it. It's still a hard terrain. But what we did, and you can't read, but I'll just explain, on this are the elements of building from footing to the last element, which is doors, windows, everything, dasas, chhajas, and these are the materials. So if you have a school in Rajasthan which has a terrain of less than 5 degrees, then what are the options that will make sense to you and what you will choose from? And as against that, if you have a school away from the coast in Kerala, then what are the choices available to you and what you choose? So you are applying a specific contextual reference points of design before you begin the design. And once you have that, it's much easier for you to do that. Now, everybody has been asking, and Jinan has been saying, we don't know how to get this into our curriculum, but we will get it. Now we have a possibility, and it's a very simple possibility, and Council of Architecture cannot object to it. They have no right to object to it. And you will still pass it through if all architectural institutions in this country accept this. Without changing the curriculum requirements, we focus only on one climatic zone per semester from 1st year to 5th year. See, we have 10 semesters, 2 semesters are gone, or 3 semesters in practical training and thesis or whatever. So we have still 7 to 8 semesters left, and India has only 6 zones to study. So there will always be 1 or 2 bonus zones. So we focus that in this semester, whatever typologies one is doing, we do only hot, dry climate. Let the study be focused on every aspect of our culture, materials, technologies, processes and crafts. What will happen? The advantages of senior students who would have greater depth in understanding would pass on through interaction to the junior students. So they will understand what that culture is all about and what not to do and what to do and what are the new innovations they can try. Every student will develop a greater understanding of all 6 climatic regions and also 2 more in 8 semesters of studio, develop greater respect for contextual aesthetics, for all the typologies and complexities of architecture that he or she is made to go through. Any graduate will then be more confident to handle all aspects, all climatic regions of India in design and construction for, I've repeated, for all climatic reasons. Supposing you graduate and you are working from Calicut but you have a project in Gujarat. You're already familiarized yourself in 6 years. You don't need to relearn. You need to add to your learning. And you want to go back to where you came from in Siliguri. You already know what Siliguri had and how you can take it forward. This will result in more contextual and more responsible design, which will respect, evolve contextual architecture for the 21st century aspirations. So rich contextual diversity is likely to be reflected in the emerging architecture of India in all its typologies. Now I think academicians are better to tell me, but I believe this can be implemented from next semester onwards. There is nobody who can object or challenge this. This is the last slide, major one. You know, this is 250-year-old ceiling painting in a jewelry shop in Jaipur. And the reason I'm showing is not the painting. The reason I'm showing this to you is the sensitivity of an ordinary electrician. These are electrical cables. Can you see them? Now, you ask your electrician to come and connect the 2 light points. He will come with any color wire, irrespective of what your wall color is, and finish the job and would say it's looking good. This man is not educated. This man is just sensitive. All you need to realize what lies in our contextual aesthetics is not architectural background. It's just to be sensitive. This gentleman in Amer Fort in 1987, do you think somebody told him to do this out of moong and moong dal? No. He enjoyed doing it. And he is proud of it. He was. Thank you so much. I don't think there's time to interact, so best thing is we do it in panel discussions or whatever. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir, for this very visually engaging journey, the different facets of built architecture, the evolution of aesthetics and how our notions are influenced by our physical and mental experiences with the art and architecture, and the need to be sensitive to the contextual diversity of different climatic regions. Thank you so much, sir. I invite Architect Vinod Sirik, sir, to present the memento to Architect Nimish, sir.